What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. I'm John J. II, your host, alongside Robert Rachow, our NFL expert. Robert, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Feeling good? Looking good? Trust me, doesn't get any better than this. I don't think so. So we got a great show in store for you guys tonight. There's controversy. Got to tell you, there's a controversy, and we got to talk about it because there's going to be people that take different sides. So we're going to talk about that, talk about playoff pictures, talk about the Detroit Lions. As you guys know, I know the people love that. Yeah, we've got a great show in store for you guys. I guess just real quick, Robert, what's your take on the NFL, where it's at right now? I know you're a Lions fan. You got to be feeling pretty good. What is your first take right now going into Week 15? How are we feeling?
As a Lions fan, feeling great. Like we've definitely stole a couple wins. It feels like, we're sitting in top of the division, fighting for that, number one seed. But, as a whole, it's been kind of exciting, really. I mean, it's kind of ramped up these past few weeks. So, like a lot of big games, big performances, Nakua and receivers just popping off. And it's been cool to see. It's kind of like offense was kind of looking down this year a little bit, like players weren't playing up to their potential. And all of a sudden it's like, man, come playoffs, they can smell the playoffs or something. And, next thing you know, we got Allen going for 6 touchdowns and Chase popping off for 200 yards almost. And yeah, it's been good to see. And, yeah, as a Lions fan, I'm excited.
Yeah, just looking at it from a fantasy standpoint, I know people are excited if you got these players on your teams, like you said, Chase doing well, Josh Allen. If you got him as your quarterback, you're feeling pretty good, especially going into the playoffs with teams clinching playoff spots. It really begs the question, though, these teams that have clinched these spots, for teams and fantasy managers that have these teams in there, maybe they've clinched a spot. Do the Bills play Josh Allen? Do they play a starting quarterback knowing they've clinched a spot, or are they going to save them for the playoffs? How do they manage that?
Yeah, I think, a lot of fantasy leagues thankfully end a week before the final week of the season just for that reason, just, in case some teams like sit some players. But you never know. Like if you're sitting in a good spot and like if your team is to a point where maybe they're guaranteed for the playoffs, but they can't get that number one seed, they might sit them a little earlier than that. So yeah, as fantasy manager, that's something you got to manage. I mean, I missed a player last week that was right up to game time decision on an injury, and I didn't bother checking Sunday morning. And next thing you know, he was out. It was like you just got to keep your toes, keep on your toes and make sure that your lineup's set for each week because it can bite you. You know, a 0 point receiver definitely cost me last week, so I could have missed the playoffs potentially. So got a
And
little
that's how it
lucky.
was for me too. I was playing playing George Pickens, and I believe it was an hour before kickoff, he said he was out, and I'm like, and I didn't even see the notification. It's like
Like, what do
1:15.
you do then?
What the hell am I doing? This guy is out. I'm looking at my notifications. It told me, but it did give me ample time. And that's the problem with these applications. And a lot of times it's declaring status happens so late where you can't convey that information to a fantasy manager in time because by then it's already kickoff and you already got him playing. It's like, well, I'm toast. I'm toast at this point. It's automatic zero. And that could be the determining factor between a win and a loss, especially at this point in the season. That matters.
Yep.
So I know that was the case in our league, and it had to be the case in your league as well. Those teams that are on the bubble, you're sitting
Mhm.
at 8-6 or 6-7, like I was, wound up winning, getting 7-7. But it was a nail biter, man. I mean, that can happen, and one player being out, that could be the factor.
Yeah, they don't call it gambling for nothing, man. It's
Hey, that's
definitely a
right.
gamble every week.
It really is. It really is a gamble. So as you can see on your screen, Josh Allen with 51.88 fantasy points. That's the highest for any quarterback in fantasy in the history of fantasy football. So quite an accomplishment. 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. And listen, this guy cannot be contained. There's a reason I'm a Bills fan. It's for stats lines like this. Okay. You look at the stat line, it's this guy's a phenom. He's not afraid to run the ball. He's going to get the ball where it has to go. And it really brings me to the point of athletic quarterbacks. Now, I made a list. I'm not going to go through the list tonight, of most athletic quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that can scamper, they can run, they can get in the pocket, they can get out of the pocket, they can get the first down if they have to. They're athletic quarterbacks. And then you got the quarterbacks that are not athletic. Maybe they're still successful, maybe they're still doing good. But I have a little bit of a problem with those types of quarterbacks. And some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time would be in that list of non-athletic quarterbacks. At least that's how I'd classify them. And you say, oh, well, they're in the NFL. They're playing at the highest level of the game. How can they not be athletic, right? How can they not be considered athletic? How dare you,
Yeah.
right? But you got the Ben Roethlisbergers. You even got Tom Brady, the GOAT, which I would put in that list of non-athletic quarterbacks. Okay, you got this guy. He's running almost a 6-second 40. That's not athletic. That's not athletic to me. I mean, you look at it at brass tacks. You look at it as what the numbers say. And I guess how much does athleticism? I'll ask you this. I don't know if I asked you this before, but this is a very pertinent issue to me. How much does athleticism matter when it comes to the quarterback position?
Yeah, it definitely matters. Like being able to extend plays. Everyone likes Pat Mahomes. His skill base. They kind of always compare him to him because he's been kind of top dog the last couple of years. But it's like he's able to extend plays, and guys just get open, man. Like you can't cover an NFL caliber receiver forever. So being able to roll out of the pocket, extend some plays is huge. Now, do you need it to win everything? I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, Tom Brady was winning them not too long ago with a different team and, past 40 years old. So I don't feel like you need it per se, but your team has to be a lot better around you. Just kind of like the Lions. Like, if the Lions didn't have a top 5 offensive line in the league, we would suck because Jared Goff can't run away from anybody. And he's had a couple decent runs this year, but nothing like a mobile quarterback would. So, we get to see it every week with the Lions. Like as soon as someone gets their hands on Goff, it's done. Like he's sacked, which isn't very often because they do have a great offensive line, good run game, play action passes, all that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely the way of the future with quarterbacks. I feel like just being able to have that dual threat guy. Patrick Mahomes, Hurts, Allen. You look at up and comers like Daniels out there. I mean, all those guys are doing really well. So it's kind of hard to argue against it when their teams are all very successful this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Jared Goff, and I would definitely put him in that category of a non-athletic quarterback. They're sitting with a great record right now, and
Yep.
that's definitely well deserved. But you don't have that front five that's going to give you that opportunity to get some time in the pocket, to get the ball to Amon-Ra when you have to, or Sam Laporta, whoever it may be, or Sonic and Knuckles. Give it to Sonic and Knuckles, okay? Right? Get those guys out in open space, and then you're gonna be fine. But you get in a pickle, you get where these D linemen are getting through the A and B gaps, and next thing you know, you're scrambling. More likely than not, you're gonna go down rather than take an injury. And every time that Jared Goff rushes past the line of scrimmage and he's rushing for yardage, I got to think Lions fans are holding their breath because it's like if this guy gets hit, this could be his last ride. And
Yep.
that's kind of, you don't want to be walking on eggshells with a quarterback if he's going to do that. He should know his athletic ability. I think he does know. So he
Yep.
probably knows better than to do that, anyway. But it's got to be scary for Lions fans to see him go out and do that. But then you got Josh Allen, you got even Patty Mahomes, which I wouldn't say is the most athletic guy, the most athletic athlete in the NFL, but he can scamper, he can get the yards when he has to. He knows to protect himself. He knows not to get hit and take crazy hits. Josh Allen, on the other hand, will put himself in harm's way at a moment's notice. So that's scary too, because he will take a hit. He will, deliver a hit, but at the same time, Sean McDermott doesn't want him to be taking hits like that. I don't think any Bills fans want him to do that.
Yeah, ask the Dolphins and Tua, man. I mean, look at all the concussions he's had from lowering his head, on incoming linebackers. I mean, I think it can hurt you too. I mean, you look at RG3 and his career was kind of cut short from just trying to be a mobile quarterback and running all the time and, tweaking his knees. But yeah, it can work against you too. So you got to be careful.
Definitely. Mama Big with a comment. The Bink Boys teams go head to head this Sunday. That is true. We're going to talk about a possible Super Bowl preview with the Bills and the Lions later on here. Trent Childers, when's the last time an athletic quarterback won the Super Bowl? Would you consider Pat Mahomes athletic? T, you stole the words right out of my mouth. Would I consider him athletic? I would put him in the athletic quarterback list. And this is why. Because he can get that yardage when he has to. He can get that, third and short, first down when he has to, put his team in position to go further down the field or at least get into field goal range. So he has that ability. Maybe not a super athletic quarterback, but he has athletic ability, and he knows how far he can go. He knows what his ceiling is when it comes to rushing the football. So, with that being said, I would put him in the athletic category, and just with the track record that the Chiefs have had with him at
Yeah.
the helm, it really speaks for itself. And it wouldn't be that way if he wasn't scampering for however many yards it may be to get that first down. So it's he's in the athletic category, even though he might not be the most athletic. But I think
Yeah, he's kind of like a prime Aaron Rodgers, like as far as play style. Aaron wasn't out to run on any play, but he could. Like
right.
he could
That's
run
a
when he
good
needed to, and
that's a good comparison there.
yeah, like as a Lions fan, it was a tough thing to watch every year where we would have him bottled up. It looks like, and next thing you know, he's rolling out of the pocket, throwing a bomb to somebody, and then we lose. It's like, man, any other quarterback feels like we'd have had him, but he's kind of slippery back there, just like Pat Mahomes. So.
Yeah, he really is slippery. That's a good word for it. He's slippery. He will get that first down, even though he's not that fast. That's speaking about Patty Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. They're not that fast. They're not that agile, but they can get the yardage when they have to, and that's the most important thing. That's what you see on the stat sheets. Is
Yeah.
that's why you see some of these props for rushing yards. They're not really going to want to run it. There's no design play for these guys to run it, but they're going to get at least probably more times than not, at least 25 plus yards rushing on the ground. So they get the yards when they have to, and that's the most important thing. So let's talk about real quick. Let's talk about the teams that have clinched playoff position, and then we're going to get into controversy here later on. We got to take some deep breaths first. So in the AFC, we got Kansas City and Buffalo that have clinched a spot. We mentioned that earlier. In the NFC, we got Detroit and Philly. And really, the battle is up for that number one seed for that first round bye. I guess, what do these teams need to do to clinch that first round bye, and what are they doing right now in the games leading up to the finale to acquire that?
Well, I mean, they're all hot right now, so I mean, just keep doing what you're doing, more or less. I mean, obviously, like a lot of these teams got some tough teams that play down the stretch where they're not just going to win out, so it's not a given. But you look at Detroit, and they got to play San Francisco and Buffalo and some division opponents. So that's kind of a tough road. And I think Philly's got a little easier ride. They got I think they got the Cowboy or the Giants and some of the easier teams because of their division.
Right.
But you just never know. I mean, I think with these teams here, I'm not shocked at all that they're in the situation that they're in. We kind of all thought that they would be playoff contenders. For the Lions and some other teams, like you just got to fend off those couple teams right behind you. Like Detroit's got Green Bay and Minnesota like right on their heels, and Kansas City and Buffalo. I mean, there's not. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of separation when you watch those two teams. So yeah, it can go either way in either division, which I feel like that's what the NFL wants, right? If they're going to be at this point in the season, there is no clear cut team. I mean, sure, you can say the Chiefs because of the recent history, but it feels like any one of these teams could be a Super Bowl winner, not just contender. So, kind of
Right.
exciting.
There's even teams that are in the hunt that could be very easily Super Bowl contenders. Just real quick, talking about the Detroit Lions. Talked about it with Tone Malone last week. He said the NFC North runs through Detroit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the way the Lions are playing right now, it's hard to argue. I mean, they swept the Packers. They beat Minnesota once already. They do have a couple, division games left and a really tough schedule. I mean, especially after, they got to play the Bills, who just put up, 42 points against the Rams, and still lost somehow, which is insane to me. But yeah, it's no easy schedule. And San Francisco's no pushover. They actually have a chance to come back in their division because their division's a little weaker this year. So they're still playing for something. And yeah, I mean, if you're the Lions, it's tough. Like, it's tough to keep winning games at that level in the NFL. It seems when you're kind of just outside looking in and they're sitting there with all these wins, it's like, oh, that's so easy for them. And they just, dominated a few guys this year. But winning in the NFL is never given, especially against divisional opponents and playoff contending teams. So it's tough. It's a tough spot to be, and not to mention all the injuries. I mean, that's like injuries aside, like if they had a fully healthy team, they'd still be in the same boat of, can we win these games and be the number one seed? But with all these injuries, it makes it that much harder. And, you know, it was pretty evident in the last like few weeks that they haven't been able to get as many, guys in on the pass rush. We haven't been getting many sacks. Interceptions are kind of down a little bit just because of the pass rush too is down. So, and even the running game defense is like kind of faltered a little bit because their linebacking core, like their entire linebacking core, is on IR or injured. So you look at that, the D line's in the same boat. Some corners are out, so it's a tough spot to be in. I feel like you know you just got to hope for making the playoffs, and when they get to the playoffs, hopefully some of these guys are back and they can make a run. That's really all I'm hoping for.
That's right. Sam Bink with the comment: the whole NFL runs through Detroit. I mean, would you disagree with that, Robert, or would you agree with that?
Hey, I mean, a lot of people agree with that right now. I mean, there's people every day on ESPN saying that they're the best team in the league. So they got to continue to prove that. I mean, it's what have you done for me lately kind of league. So if they go out and just lay an egg against the Bills, who are an obvious Super Bowl contender, then that's going to put some cracks in the old armor there. So they got to keep playing like this, and so far so good.
That's right, they do. And it really begs the question: is this going to be a Super Bowl preview with the Bills and the Lions? You mentioned if the Lions do lay an egg, you got to assume the Bills are coming in with a vengeance after that close loss against the Rams. It's going to be a hell of a game. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. You got to assume, with this being a Super Bowl preview, regardless of clinching the playoffs or not, I got to assume Jared Goff's playing and Josh Allen's playing. That's kind of almost a given. You're probably going to see an air raid. I'm just going to put it out there, and that's going to be good for both sides, I think, because that's what they're looking for. And if you're looking, and we're not the only ones talking about this being a Super Bowl preview. This is a very good possibility, high probability chance that these teams meet in the Super Bowl. So, given that fact that it's a preview, possibly, potentially, with how things are looking, at least, I guess, how do you think both teams? We'll start with Detroit and then go with Buffalo. How do you think Detroit is going into this game specifically this Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, after Josh Allen's like historic performance, they're just going to try to figure out how they can contain him. Like if they could get rid of his rushing touchdowns alone, like that would be a huge factor in the game. So they just keep him from scrambling, keep him in the pocket. I mean, I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but with a quarterback that's playing that well and is that mobile, like you have to do something. Either you're spying him with a linebacker, you're sending a little more blitzes, or you're trying to get him to just throw dump off passes and run the ball more. I think that's what Aaron Glenn's going to do because I mean he's played the guys pretty well this year with all the injuries. They've still held some teams in check, so I think they got a shot to do that. But it's a tough task, especially against the Bills and I think they just got to keep their mojo going on offense and kind of lean on that a little bit, just like they did last week with multiple fourth down conversions.
Right, exactly. Okay, so what do the Bills have to do coming into play Detroit? What do they have to look for? What do they have to attack?
Yeah, I mean, they have to attack these corners. They have to hopefully keep Allen upright in the pocket with the Lions pass rush suffering right now, which really for them is just going to amount to can they hold up against the Lions blitzes because Aaron Glenn likes to blitz and leave people in man coverage. And the people that are in man coverage are a little suspect. We got Terrion Arnold's, young, right? I mean, he's getting a lot of PI calls. I mean, I'd imagine they're going to throw the ball his way, even just to draw the flags. And, some of these backup guys like Kendall Vildor and stuff have really not held up too well in deep pass coverage. So, thankfully the Lions got a couple safeties on the back end. So I anticipate, stuff over the middle is going to work a little more for them, try to work those backup linebackers and backup corners. But, yeah, the Bills just got to ride the wave. I mean, they played so well. They played good enough to win, even though they didn't. So if they can score 42 points, I would say they would win this game. So I don't think the Lions are going to crack 40 on the Bills. So I think that's what they got to do is just kind of keep it rolling.
Interesting point. Paul Steele, Lions' biggest test yet. If the Lions win, they will be in the Super Bowl. If they lose, they will be watching from home. Wow. Interesting take from Steele. So, what do you have to do with that statement, Robert? Just because, I mean, it's not true. It's not true per
Yeah,
se, but I guess looking at that from a mentality standpoint, from where you're going to be mentally incurring a loss, say they do lay an egg, like you mentioned, is possible. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You'd like to hope they don't. You'd like this to be a shootout. But how do you think that that will affect the Lions' psyche? Say they do lay an egg. How does that affect things?
yeah, I think it would if they come out and only score a couple touchdowns and just get blown out. I think that would negatively affect everyone's morale. But like if they come out, it's a close game, they lose by 7 to 10 points against what's probably a Super Bowl contender. So I wouldn't be too concerned either way. I mean, even last year, like the Lions, had a couple stinkers that were like, man, is this the same team? Are they even going to make the playoffs? It felt like a couple games last year. And yeah, so I wouldn't put all that weight on one game, but it's a good point. I mean, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. So we might as well start this weekend. So
That's right. We got to think about, too, the Thanksgiving game not too long ago with the Bills and the Lions, how close that game was. I mean, that came down to a field goal, as we know.
yeah,
I guess could that be any bit of a preview into what we have? I mean, you got a lot of the same personnel. You got some turnover, you got some changes that have been made on both sides. But I guess looking at that game, that's kind of how you expect a game like this to be this Sunday to be on paper. A close game, a shootout, maybe high scoring. You got some good defensive stands, but it's going to come down to limiting the small mistakes because that's going to be the difference between a win and a loss for either team. And you'd like it to be in that scenario compared to a blowout, which I don't think anybody is really foreshadowing. But worse things have happened. But
yeah, I think it's going to be a shootout, and yeah, I think the turnovers will decide the game. Personally, like if one team throws a bad pick or a inopportune fumble, that could really decide this game. So just from a momentum standpoint, like if everything's kind of feeling close, going into the second half, even that turnover could really gain the momentum for the other team. So I think that's how it's going to go. But you never know. I mean, the NFL is the NFL, so it could be a blowout. It could be a 1 point game. You just never know. But
that's right. A lot of capability for surprise, no matter what game you're looking at. So, looking at some teams in the hunt, you got the Steelers at 10-3. They're looking pretty good to make it. Seahawks at 8-5. Texans at 8-5. Buccaneers moving up 4 spots, sitting at 7-6 in the NFC South. They look like they're probably going to clinch that division. Ravens at 8-5. Vikings at 11-2. You got a lot of teams that really have good records. They're looking good on paper. You're going to see some teams that probably deserve to be in the playoffs that aren't going to make it. But that's just that's how the cookie crumbles. So it's just the
yeah,
reality of the situation. Sam again with the comment: Campbell won't let Buffalo steal another one from them, especially at home again. I don't know, Sammy. I don't know, Sammy. Watch out. Watch out. That's all I got to say. You don't want to sleep on these Bills, and you can't. You just can't do it. But it's going to be a hell of a test. The Lions are rolling. They have every reason to get a big win at home. But it's going to be the Lions' game to lose, I would say, more than it is the Bills' game to win. But
yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
teams on the bubble, you got the Colts at 6-7, the Rams at 7-6, moving up a couple spots. Falcons at 6-7, second in the NFC South. They've been playing terribly, and it's just sad. I'm a Kirk Cousins guy. I like to see them play well, but it hasn't been good for him at least the
I
last
think he's
few
gone,
games.
man. He's out of there. He's out of town.
They showed memes of him looking at, it was like the Wolverine meme where he's laying in bed looking at pictures, looking at the picture frame, and he's looking at Jettas, and he's looking at all these guys in the Vikings, being like, oh man, just think if I would have stayed, and now Sam Darnold is relishing in all of that greatness. So it's you always say the grass is greener on the other side, and I think that's definitely applicable in this case. But yeah, I don't know, where do you see Kurt going if he is done?
I think he should retire personally,
Really?
but I don't know if he
I mean,
continues
he's
to
up
play.
there.
Yeah, if he continues to play the way he's played, and considering his age and everything, like if he finishes this season the way he's playing right now, then yeah, I would just say just forget this season ever happened. Take the old Men in Black, flasher to the face, and move on with your life.
Yeah.
Um, he had some good games early on, but man, I don't even think he's thrown a touchdown in like 5 weeks or something. It's kind of crazy at this point.
Yeah, and
I,
it
I
got
think
to the
he's like
point
0 for
like
8 or something.
yeah, I just stopped watching him because it's like I hate to see him play that badly. It's just it's sad to see. It's really sad to see
It's
because
like
they
you
had
got to
so much
put. It's
promise.
like putting your old dog down or something. That's what it feels like a little bit.
Ooh, that's harsh, Robert. It's harsh, but it's also I also can't refute it. So valid at best. Good deal. All right, we got to talk about that Chiefs win, against the upright, really winning in Chiefs fashion against the beaten and battered Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, you really feel for the Cincinnati Bengals at this point in the season, sitting at 5-8. They're on the bubble, but they're kind of on their way out in the AFC North. How do you dissect that game, and how can you really write up or script up a better Chiefs win or a more Chiefs-esque win, especially at Arrowhead, other than how they won? They didn't have Harrison Butker; it was the backup, so that almost adds insult to injury. But I mean, off the upright and in as time expires. Come on now.
Yes, someone either like sold their soul on that team, or they got some Louisiana voodoo magic going on or something. I don't know what they got going on, but it's like seems like every game I catch a clip and it's just them winning in some crazy fashion in the final seconds of the game, and they do it every week, and they've done it all season. So that's a dangerous team when you can find ways to win these games that close every week. You almost seem like you're invincible at that point. Almost like go back and look at some of those Patriot teams. It seems like they couldn't lose either. So
Right.
I don't know. They play down to everyone else. If the other team's only scoring a couple scores, it seems like they're right there with them somehow. But if the other team's starting a shootout, now all of a sudden the Chiefs are putting up 40 points again. Like I don't get it, but it's kind of becoming one of those teams that hard not to hate them when they just keep winning like that. Every week and every year are in Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, that's why they're so easy to hate too, is because of that exact reason. I can't tell you how many times I've been watching a Chiefs game and thinking, they're down. It looks so improbable. I'm like, oh my God, how are they going to come back and win this game? And then I could turn the game off and just check the box score at the end and be like, oh, that's how they did it. Okay, they figured it out. And I can't. And there's got to be a montage video as well of Patty Mahomes just with his hands on his head, not even really know what's going on, and they somehow win the game as time expires, especially if it's by a kick. And
It's
then
like
you just see
deja
him.
vu.
It's like deja vu. He's walking across the field, dapping up the quarterback. Oh man, good game, bro. Good game. And it's just like, oh my God, like I've seen this before, and it's multiple times. Like there's got to be a montage video of that somewhere. I mean, we've all seen the pictures too of Patty Mahomes switching jerseys with the ref. I don't know if that was the case with this win against the Bengals, but it was. We've seen games that have ended that way too, and calls have been the reason for it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, it's time for controversy. We're going to do it to you. So, on a fourth down playing in Detroit in the Dome, Ford Field, you guys know the location, playing against the Green Bay Packers. You all seen what happened. It was Jared Goff. I believe he slipped on, was that Graham Glasgow? I think he stepped on his ankle and he went to a knee and he wound up handing the ball off to the ball carrier. Who was that? Was that Montgomery or who was that? Was
Yep,
that Gibbs? It
yep,
was Monty. Okay.
yep.
So hands it to Monty. They get the first down, and basically the game is over. They get in position. Jake Bates gets a field goal, and the rest is history. So how the rule is written, and we've talked about it here a little bit in the pre-show. So it's Rule 7, Section 2, Article 1C. And I will read it as follows here. And it's really just kind of it's a precedent-setting play because I don't think in my history of watching football I've ever seen anything like this before. And it's such an improbable thing to happen. And that's where it really sprouted in my head the inability for Jared Goff to get the ball from under center and get away from the linemen that are trying to block that A gap. Because it's like you got to get the ball and get out of there, get in position to hand the ball off, do whatever you got to do. but he somehow trips on his guard. And so this is the rule as written. He went to a knee, and then he wound up handing the ball to Monty, getting the first down. The rest is history. This is how the rule is written. When a quarterback immediately drops to his knee, okay, comma, or simulates dropping to his knee behind the line of scrimmage. So there's two key points there. Immediately drops to the knee and behind the line of scrimmage. So how does that apply to what happened? Obviously, NFL rules as we know it, you can go down and you can get back up as long as you're not touched by a defender before you get up. Um, how the rule is written is kind of different from classic NFL down rules. How do you interpret the rule, and how do you interpret what happened based on the rule? And in this case, an omission of a call.
Yeah, for me, it's like the rule was written with intent in mind, right? I mean, if you're going into victory formation at the end of the game to take a knee, that's some pretty obvious like intent from the quarterback that he's trying to take a knee and run out the clock. Whereas in this situation, he trips, right? So he trips, knee touched the ground as he's handing the ball off. To me, there's no intent there. Like he wasn't trying to fake a knee. He wasn't trying to pull one on the defense or something like that to, skate the rules. But to your point, if that's how the rules really are written, then they kind of need to rewrite them just to, put that intent in there because it seems like that's kind of a just common sense, like general assumption you would make. Like obviously he wasn't trying to take a knee. But if that's how it is, it should be written that way in the rules as well. But for me, I never even like thought about it just because the way the NFL's, played. When he handed it off, I was like, oh, what a great play. Here he is, falling down. That could have been the end of the game right there for the Lions. So for him to be able to even hand it off, and they got the first down was a huge play for the Lions. And yeah, I just think that, the fans were trying to pry at whatever they could to, say, oh, they didn't deserve this win. Like, well, stop them on fourth down next time, man. I mean, you had 5 chances. So,
Yeah, no, you got a good point. I think that really is the root of the issue is the ambiguity with the writing of the rule. The verbiage is too ambiguous, and that's kind of the
yeah,
point of rules is to be not ambiguous. You want it to be set in stone. So I think that could be a precedent setting thing. And I really didn't think it was anything either. The announcers, the commentators, they didn't have any idea about the rule in real time. So I watched it in real time. They were
yep,
giving Jared Goff kudos for having the athletic ability to not only fall to the ground, but retain possession of the ball and get the handoff
yep,
away, which was really it was the icing on the cake for that win to get Jake Bates then in position to score the game winning field goal. But I think that really is the root of the issue is the ambiguity and the lack of verbiage stating quarterback intent to go to a knee. It doesn't state anywhere anything about intent. I think that's the problem that here. And then not only that, but you have behind the line of scrimmage in the same sentence as well. And then a quarterback immediately drops to a knee. That can be twisted and sliced however you want to. So I didn't really think anything of it until the next day. I saw it on Twitter. There was a lot of people up in arms about it. Should have been down, should have been turnover on downs, and that should have been the end of the play. Obviously, the Packers would have still had to go the length of the field and get the game-winning field goal or score, or would have went to OT or whatever. But it was just a really interesting thing that happened. It's got to be a precedent-setting thing where they're going to have a rules change. I think this would be a good rules change. In comparison to all the bad rules changes that have basically been introduced as new rules into the NFL. I think this would be a good rule to change the verbiage here. I don't think they need many signatures because I believe I don't want to go out on a limb here and put any words in anybody's mouth, but I believe that was the intent, no pun intended, of the rules makers to have intent almost implied with that rule.
yes, I would agree with that. And it's like, I think the refs did the right thing though. Like, even though the rule's kind of ambiguous, it's like that's kind of been the general assumption. Okay, he fell to the ground. He's not down yet. This is the NFL. Let's let the play continue. And then he hands it off. So, like, if they would have called it there, I think that would have been like 50 times more egregious than just letting it play out. So I'm glad that they did that. We've seen it in the past. You think Calvin Johnson, the catch rule, like we didn't know what a catch was for a couple seasons. And,
Right.
um, you know, Jim Schwartz throwing a challenge flag mid play against the Texans, unreviewable. They score a touchdown when the running back was obviously down by contact. Like you can think of dozens of examples just against the Lions that have went the other way where they did pull some weird rule out of the hat and all of a sudden we lost the game, you know? So
It's
to see
true.
one that wasn't called, like I don't think that was a big deal at all. But I could see, if you're on the losing side, how you could be a little upset. But I mean, that's just not how the game's, been ruled historically as it is.
Yeah, I think also just from an officiating crew's perspective, looking at the rule, and in this case, the omission of the call, I think it was less damage and, in essence, less controversial from the officiating crew standpoint to, not make that call. Because if they did make
Yeah,
that call, you're opening a brand new can of worms, and then you're almost interpreting and applying the rule as you believe it should be applied rather than how it's written. And the bottom line is the rule is too ambiguous. But I also think the rules makers and the writers, everybody else, they didn't prepare for a situation like that to even happen. You really never see that
yeah,
happen ever. It only had to be in that point of the game on fourth down in an NFC North matchup that matters. Okay. And it happened in an important moment in the game. So
yeah,
it just had to be that to happen and to really spark controversy, mostly amongst Green Bay fans.
sure. Yeah, I guess for Green Bay fans, just enjoy the calls while you had them, while you had Aaron Rodgers, man. I mean, you guys got dozens of them. Seemed like one a year, So give
Oh,
us
they
one
did.
once in a while.
That's right. They got plenty of them. Paul Steele with the comment that may be the worst call, but best result by any coach going on fourth down by any team. Not smart coaching. Lions could have won by kicking the field goal on fourth down, maybe from where they were. Yeah, it would have been a deep kick. I guess that's the other thing too, is people have thrown stones at Dan Campbell for going for that fourth down, and not only that fourth down, but other fourth downs in the past. I mean, people have said this guy has brass balls, and they probably aren't wrong,
Yeah,
especially
hard to
to do
knock
it.
them when it works, man. It's hard to knock them when it works.
That's right, and it's I guess it's almost hard to vilify him if it doesn't work because you give him that give him that props for having the will to go for it, and even if you don't get it, at least you had that will and that
Belief
fire
in your
inside
team.
you, yeah, to go for it on a fourth down and take that risk. Believe in your men on the field, believe in the 11 men you have on that field, and
Yeah,
that's what Dan Campbell does week after week.
and let's be real here. I mean, when half your team is on IR on defense, you got to start going for it on fourth down. Like Dan Campbell aside, there was zero chance I would have faith in us stopping them with like 45 seconds to a minute left to get into field goal range and lose. So I honestly like that one at the end kind of shocked me, but then, when you hear the explanation of it, it makes sense. And he didn't even want to go for that one as the kicker. Like he was sending the field goal team onto the field, and Jared Goff said, "Hey man, I wanted to go for that." And he's like, he kind of looked to the side a little bit and he's like, "All right, fuck it, we're going for it." And
Really,
yeah.
I didn't
So
know
Jared
that.
Jared Goff wanted to do it and they sent him back out on the field. So that's just
Interesting.
believing in your quarterback, believing in your team, and shit, they got like 7 yards or whatever it was, so they got plenty. But yeah, it was the head scratcher was the one on your own 30-yard line, right? Like you're on your own 30, you have a great punter, punt the ball, let's let the field change, but flip the field on them, give your defense a chance to make a stop, even though they're missing everybody. And that was the head scratcher for me. And it's lucky that one didn't cost them because they immediately got a touchdown out of that. So they could have lost the game on that one call alone. So, but you're gonna live and die by it, man. You go for it that many times, it's like kind of your identity now. You're gonna win and lose that way. So I've just kind of accepted that's who they are, and as a fan, you got to ride the wave.
That's right, and they have lived and they have died by it.
Yeah,
But they're fully expecting either outcome, and obviously they want the former to live. They want to live by the call rather than die by the call to go for it on a fourth down. But you have to have that thought in the back of your mind that this could not go our way, possibly.
yeah,
And this could cost us the game, regardless of what point in the game you do make that decision to go for it on fourth down. So just really interesting psychology with that whole deal and going for it on fourth downs. I think that's going to go down as one of the pillars of Dan Campbell's coaching career at the Detroit Lions is living and dying by those fourth down conversions.
Yeah, just get a bronze statue of his giant ball sack right out in front of the stadium. We'll be good to go.
Get him a wheelbarrow, and he's good to go, man. Good deal, Robert. All right, buddy. So we'll wrap it up there. Any final thoughts, final words going into Week 15 NFL, leading into the playoffs? What do you got for the people?
Hey man, if you're on a good fantasy run here and you're in the fantasy playoffs, just don't forget to get your starters on Sundays, and make sure that if there's anybody left on the waiver wire to scoop them up now because they're not going to be around for the playoffs. Like there's still a few guys hanging out there that were kind of fringe players that have really come on late in the year. Like I always forget the guy's name, that receiver for Tennessee, who's keeps scoring touchdowns every week. It seems like I always forget
Yeah,
his
I
name,
can't
but
think of him.
yep. But yeah, so guys like him, unheralded dudes that I don't even know their name, could put up 20 points for me in the playoffs. So keep that in mind moving forward and win some money.
That's right. Keep an eye on those fringe players because they could be trending upward, especially with all the injuries that these teams are incurring as
Yep.
the weeks in every one of these games become more and more important. So very good advice there. All right, guys, make sure to check us out on social media. Find our links in the bottom of the podcast in the description. And I will be in touch with you guys next time. For now, I'm John Jay II, alongside Robert Rachow with Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gen Sports Network. Have a great night.